Welcome to the second hour of the Elias Macko Show. And all week long on the Elias Macko Show, we'll be looking at the past and future of Olympic Stadium. Simply put, we're putting the Big O on trial. The stadium was built for the 1976 Olympics, but was not finished in time. The Montreal Expos moved in the following year and played in an open-air stadium until 1987, when the Big O's supposedly retractable roof was installed. It was retracted for the first time in 1989 and immediately had issues. The Kevlar fabric roof ended up being prone to tearing, and within years, it stopped functioning. Baseball left in 2004, and it's a rare occasion that the playing surface at the Big O is used for a major sporting event today. The Quebec government has spent decades trying to figure out what to do with the stadium, and last week, the latest in the saga. Faced with the fact that construction firms do not want to touch the roof replacement project, the Olympic Park has now contracted two firms to come up with a plan to replace the roof and the technical ring, one of the key structural elements that support the building. When we were thinking about who to start off Big O Week with, I thought of our next guest. Jeremy Filosa, sports journalist at Cogeco Nouvelles and a French language voice of the MLS on AppleTV+, joins us now on the line. Hi, Jeremy.
Elias, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
It's great to talk to you, Jeremy. And I think, on the French language side, there's nobody that has covered Olympic Stadium like you and knows this dossier inside and out.
Yeah.
So, Jeremy, when you hear the latest story that now they're going to go with a consortium here in two firms because nobody bid in the open public call for tenders, what goes through your mind?
Well, the first thing is I think we've passed the point of no return now. It's, up until this point, the renovations they wanted to put together, replacing the roof, adding giant screen, replacing the seating and all that, sort of made certain sense. But now, if you have to replace the technical roof, we're talking about additions of hundreds of millions of dollars more, which is logical because the stadium is nearly 50 years old, right? Mm-hmm. But at this point, if you have to replace, that part of the stadium, is it worth it? And the reality is, it's not worth it anymore. And this is why I threw out the idea last week when this story came out and this is something that I had talked about nearly 20 years ago, is why not kill, two birds with one stone, transform Olympic Stadium into a baseball park, and then you solve your stadium issue. You solve your problem with the baseball park that you needed for the Expos. Unfortunately, none of that happened. But now we have another window that opens up. Major League Baseball will expand in a few years. We know that the Bronfmans were very interested in trying to bring the Expos back. So there may be an opportunity here for the Quebec government to say, let's approach Major League Baseball and ask them if there was a possibility to bring a baseball team back. Mm-hmm. Should we decide to transform Olympic Stadium into a baseball park? And what I'm saying here is just keeping the base and really building a baseball park and not a stadium the way it is now. Is there something that can be done so that at the end of the day, you do invest all that money, but you have a team that plays there full time?
Okay, but Jeremy, does that solve the bigger issue with Olympic Stadium? Because right now in this city, we don't have a facility that could host a FIFA World Cup game. And obviously, we know there's a whole other story about us not even trying at a certain point to host games. But forget about sports for a second. A Taylor Swift concert. We don't have a facility that could host a Taylor Swift concert the way that artist would want it. And then think about Montreal as the mecca of hockey. And we have a city that can't even host an outdoor NHL game. How much would it cost, actually, Jeremy, to give us a facility, Olympic Stadium facility, that could do those things? Forget about baseball.
Yeah, I think we're talking, over $1 billion because this stadium needs to be completely transformed and modernized. If you look at what happened in Vancouver with BC Place, with a stadium that was much younger, and they had to put $600 million to make it, brand new. And now they have two teams playing in it. But those were costs of 15 years ago. And that stadium didn't have nearly all the problems that Olympic Stadium has. So we're looking at north of $1 billion. But, we spent all that money all those years ago. But then it became taboo to invest in anything that had to do with sports. This city doesn't even have a minor league baseball stadium for championships or tournaments, or even a team to settle here, a double A team, a triple A team.
Hmm.
Honestly, it's frankly embarrassing if you look at everything else that's happening in every other major city in North America, sports wise. We're dead last, but we're not even dead last. We're buried underground. When you think about the fact that Olympic Stadium this January, it will be 25 years since the roof broke,
Hmm.
tore, and here we are 25 years later, and we're still wondering what we need to do. I mean, this is not serious. This is not, this is not what a major league city should look like and should act like.
And Jeremy, I know that you have sent out these proposals and ideas to save the Olympic Stadium, but with the latest in this saga, isn't it not
Yeah.
time to just tear off the bandage and demolish Olympic Stadium? I'm not talking about the tower, but get rid of the stadium.
Right.
Wouldn't that be the right thing to do? And then we can focus on building other facilities.
Well, I mean, you can either tear it down and rebuild, or you can tear part of it down. As I mentioned,
Mm.
remove the roof, remove the technical ring, and see if there's a way to transform it into a park. The one thing I do want to see, though, is something else being built. Whether it be a soccer football stadium for the Alouettes and CF Montreal to play in, or whether it turns into a baseball park so that we can maybe get a baseball team back or something like that. But if we were to tear it down and replace it by condos or anything like that, that for me would be a major disappointment, because in every major city in North America, you have a sports complex, a sports center where all your buildings are, where all your teams play, a place where, Olympic Stadium, there's so much space there. You could actually probably even build two stadiums, obviously at a more normal scale,
Hmm.
where you could have the football team play, the soccer team play, the baseball team could even play there. There's so much space to build restaurants, boutiques, hotels. It could really become the pole, your sports pole. But at a certain point, it can't be a facility that's been there for 50 years. Most of the stadiums of those years in North America have either been torn down or
Hmm.
massively rebuilt. We're one of the only ones that have just left it there. And the problem, Elias, because people say, are we going to put money in this? Well, the problem is it's going to become a security issue. We already know that if you have a couple of inches of snow on the roof, you can't hold events. I mean, I don't want to be here, projecting towards the future and thinking that something bad might happen, but eventually
Yeah.
something bad's going to happen.
We're continuing our conversation with Jeremy Filosa as it's Big O week on the Elias Macko Show. All week long at 10 o'clock, we will look at the past and future of the Olympic Stadium and try and figure out what to do with the building. Jeremy Filosa with us. He's a sports journalist over at Cogeco. So, Jeremy, let's pick it up from where we left off. First things first, do we have an issue? Is the bigger issue in this city, maybe in this province, that we have a hang up with supporting or spending money on sports venues?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at everything else that's going on in North America, how infrastructures are improved when they need to be improved. We could take the example right now of Saputo Stadium, where Joey Saputo wants to improve the stadium, wants to inject, many millions of dollars that in a stadium that belongs to taxpayers. The Saputo Stadium does belong to taxpayers, and they're not able to get a deal done with the city, where the only demand from CF Montreal is to not increase taxes. I think in return for $100 million investment, sorry, in a building that belongs to taxpayers, that's a pretty good deal. That's something that should be, that should be done pretty easily. But we have, unfortunately, this mentality here that, how can I say this? Sports is more linked to men and not women. It's no longer cool here to invest in sports, domain where men make a lot of money playing a game. Sports, it's also linked to privileged men of a certain age. And so to go out there politically and say, we will make a deal with a white privileged man so that he can continue profiting from sports, it's not something that's very cool or attractive to a lot of people here. So definitely, there's a huge hiccup, and I'm sure that one of the reasons is because they're scared of media backlash, how this is going to be looked upon, how is this going to be seen if we give a tax break, for example, to a businessman like Joey Saputo. So yeah, I think it's a major issue.
We're so afraid of giving a tax break or putting in some infrastructure that'll cost a couple $100 million, but will benefit a billionaire, that we're content to spend billions of dollars putting money into a stadium that has no use.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jeremy, listen, we're spending all week on this, right? We really are going to put the Olympic Stadium on trial. As someone that has spent 2 decades covering this topic, what are the questions that you've spent 2 decades on and haven't been able to answer?
Well, what's the plan for this stadium? And that's the reality is we have a stadium. We don't have a full-time team that plays in it. Everything else around the Olympic Stadium works fine. The tower, the infrastructures, the pools and stuff like that, the Esplanade, there are shows there. But this lack of, having somebody in power to make a decision and say, this is what we're going to do, and here's the plan, and let's go through with it. This is what's most disappointing, because in other major North American cities, of course, they have difficult decisions to take. But at a certain point, and as we all know, if you have a property, a home, if you don't take care of it, eventually the problems multiply. And that's the situation that we're in right now, is we've waited so long that the project that we can put on board or put on the table is so complicated, it's so expensive that we'd rather not even look at it. But we've ignored this problem long enough. It needs to be solved. And I know that, Skydome in Toronto or Rogers Center is now owned by Rogers, so it's a completely different animal. But look at how the Blue Jays, every 3, 4 to 5 years, upgrade certain parts of the stadium to make sure that they don't get to this point, to make sure that the stadium is always modern, is always standing up and doesn't have any infrastructural problems. Well, despite the fact that this stadium here does belong to taxpayers, it's not any different. If you don't take care of it, eventually bad things will happen. So we've waited long enough. A decision needs to be made, and we'll have to live with it.
But the difference is, Jeremy, the difference is Toronto, they have a tenant, right? They have a baseball team that plays there that plays there for the entire baseball season. We don't have that here. Do we have an idea, Jeremy? And I think it was 5-6 years ago when I last looked at the demolition side of things, that the number that was thrown out there was $700 million to demolish it. Is that an option? Like, do we know how much it would cost to just get rid of the stadium?
I'm not sure. Obviously, for the longest time, they were talking about $1 billion, but this is going back at least 15 years. This was also something that was studied by from the Régie des Installations Olympiques. So how credible is that? Obviously, their objective and their agenda was to show that it was not worth it to tear it down because they want to keep all those jobs. So I'm not exactly sure 100%. But like I said, I think if we meet halfway, meaning if part of the stadium is torn down, if we remove the roof, if we keep the base of the stadium exactly like it was done in BC, is there a way to meet halfway between that $1 billion it would cost to tear it all down and clean the area up, and just keep the base of the stadium, restructure it, and build something that at least we'll have for the long term? Because if you're going to invest $1 billion and then end up with a clean slate and nothing on it, well, you've invested $1 billion and then you got to build something on top. But if you invest that $1 billion to transform the stadium and have something that you can live with, then to me, that can make sense. But it's got to be ultra modern, and we have to not make the mistakes of the past. I go to BC Place often because I call soccer games there on a regular basis. They have a beautiful retractable roof. It opens and closes. They can use it in the summer. They can use it in the winter. They can use it for shows. They can use it for so many different things. And the building is occupied, nearly half of the days of the year. Then that's what you want. Because if you want to be able to, at the end of the day, profit from it, well, it's got to be usable 365 days a year.
Are there certain parts of the way that the Olympic Stadium was designed? Because I know what they did in
Yeah.
Vancouver, Jeremy, but I've
Yes.
heard that the way the Olympic Stadium was originally designed, just even how the seating level is configured, right? It's not
Right.
steep and close to the field. You're very far away the more rows you get
Hmm.
back, right? And that the
Yes.
design decisions and the roof, by the way, because it was always designed to have that fabric roof on top being
Right.
held up by the tower. Because of all of
Hmm.
those things, that it's not fixable, it's not salvageable in the way that we saw in Vancouver?
Well, I think with the engineering today, everything is doable. But yes, absolutely. You'd have to get the seats closer to the field. That's exactly what they did in BC. Yeah, but there are people telling us that if you cannot actually remove the technical ring, if you do remove it, the stadium will collapse. Is that true? I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
not an engineer, but I'm thinking to myself that, if anything, anything is doable. Anything is doable. It's just got to be done the right way. But unfortunately, here in this province, when you look at everything that's going on, and we have a perfect example this morning with the REM, is that it seems that we are unable to make things run smoothly at the cost that was envisioned, and
Mhm.
with the quality that is promised. So I understand people that are very skeptical because of all the mistakes that have been done in the past. They do not trust that this will be done properly, and it's unfortunately sad, but it's the reputation that we've built for ourselves here.
Last question, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Location, location, location.
Yeah.
Some people would say, no, you need to build the facilities downtown or in that, the new
Yeah.
area, the Bridge Bonaventure area, because Olympic Stadium, even if you build the latest and greatest, you're still in the wrong part of town. What do you say on
Mm.
location?
Well, listen, it's not ideal, but honestly, I don't think Major League Baseball would have a problem with a stadium that's less than 4 miles away from downtown. A lot of stadiums are a lot further from downtown. You do have the subway system to get there. Hopefully, the REM, when it starts working properly, will help people get there much more easily. At the end of the day, we're seeing that all the lands that are available near downtown are not affordable. There was that opportunity with the Peel Basin that was also lost now. So at the end of the day, yeah, I would love to have everything downtown, but if they can put together a sports pole there in the East End and make everything work, I think people will live with it.
Jeremy Filosa from Cogeco Nouvelles. He's one of the French language voices of the MLS on Apple TV Plus. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for kicking off our Big O week.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.